Boom, baby. What's up, everybody? Welcome to Own the Chaos. My name is Brad. The stock market is crazy and chaotic, and I made it my mission to help you guys own it. Crazy day. It's been super choppy. It was red, it was green, it was red, it was red, and now we're back to green. Hopefully, we'll end the day green. Right now, it is Tuesday, May 3rd, 2022. The S&P 500, as I speak, is up around 1/3%. It's good for 14 points. The Dow is up 18 points. And the NASDAQ just, of course it did, just turned red again. What a wild day. WTI crude is 102.9 per barrel. So very interesting stuff there. Just really, really choppy. I think a lot of this probably has a lot to do with, obviously, the Fed coming in tomorrow, potentially talking about whatever the hell is going to be happening. And we have earnings today as well. We're gonna have earnings we're gonna be reacting to. We got on deck here AMD, Airbnb, Starbucks, Lyft, Skyworks, Caesars, and any other ones that you guys want to go ahead and have me react to. Put them down in the chat. Would love to get your guys' opinions on all of this stuff. I'm super pumped, as many of you know, for Airbnb, one of my biggest convictions in my own portfolio. And so that's certainly something that I'm looking forward to. I gotta be honest, I'm a little bit nervous given the reactions that we've seen from Expedia as well as Hilton. Some of the other ones, I mean, we just watched Avis absolutely annihilate earnings yesterday. One of the most impressive beats I've seen all earnings season this season. And it was in the red. I mean, it was up 13% just before the market opened, and it went red. So I am a little bit nervous for these earnings a little bit, if I'm honest. We'll get into a lot of that. But before we do, as always, let's hit up the starting five. We got Pastor David Hopper. What's up, my man? Tiger's Edge, Buzz Jones, John Gosson, and Philip Stroh. You guys are our starting five. If you guys missed the starting five, it could be because you are not subscribed to the channel or you didn't hit that notification bell. So make sure you do that so you might be the first one to get shouted out in the chat if you guys end up showing up early. Also, real quick, I haven't addressed this in a minute. It's been a couple of streams. So make sure you're hitting the join button next to subscribe. The only way that this channel actually continues to thrive and survive is if it's through the Chaos Crew. For $4.99 a month, you get a watch list from me that I put out every day before the market opens. It gives you a nice snapshot of whatever's going on in the market, my expectations, what I'm seeing in the market every single day. And I put out 5 stocks that I give fundamental and technical analysis for. It's super cheap. It's $4.99 a month. It doesn't really impact your wallet all that much, but it means the world to me, and I certainly would appreciate it. So hit that join button next to subscribe or go to ownthechaos.com. Some of you guys can't see the join button through YouTube for some reason. So make sure you go to ownthechaos.com if you don't see that and become part of the crew. Those who you can see bulls and bears next to your name can attest to the type of value that I provide. For $5 a month, you can't beat it. So it's actually less than $5 a month. I mean, we're talking almost a gallon of gas here. And it pays for itself, people. So thanks so much for that. Appreciate the love, support, and everything else. Let's say you guys. I see a lot of you guys shouting out in here. Airbnb to the moon says our music. Interesting. Can we discuss yesterday's earnings, Expedia and Avis, which is up after hours and are down today? Ganesh, yes. So here's what happened. Here's the story. Hilton came out with earnings this morning, and guidance was lower than expected. They basically were projecting a slowing of growth, which was a bit interesting to me. And I actually made a tweet, pretty controversial, which I didn't realize was controversial, that nobody's going to hotels anymore. They're going to Airbnbs. And I was actually a little bit surprised with some of the reaction that I got. And I was also surprised that Hilton would come out and say that, especially considering the fact that we are seeing record demand from the airlines, and they've expressed that. We got Royal Caribbean that's coming up with earnings on Thursday, which we'll hear from them and to see how demand is going. And there's a lot of other travel-related stocks. American Express has talked about this. Visa has talked about this, about how there's been a giant travel boom. So what's going on with Hilton? I think this is an isolated situation. And I actually put out a tweet saying nobody's going to hotels anymore. And I actually, because of the response that I got, ended up putting out a poll, which I thought was very interesting as far as the results were concerned. We take a look at this real quick. I'm going to share my screen with you guys. You can go follow me at Own the Chaos. here's a vote here. I put it out a couple hours ago. 96 votes. Airbnb 64% would prefer to use while they're traveling of resorts such as like Disney, something like that. Hotels 28%. Which, hey, listen, I was a little bit surprised by that, and I'm not really surprised at the results. Huge amount of you were in favor of Airbnb, and put your comments in the chat as well. What is your preference? But I also put the same poll out on my community tab for you in YouTube. So my YouTube viewers also got this poll, and it was a much different result. Around the same amount, a little bit less, 68 votes. 44% said Airbnb, 44% said hotel, resort, and other came in at 6% respectively. So I thought that was a surprising statistic or surprising turnout in votes, especially because of, for me personally, I thought that that Airbnb was absolutely crushing it, and they are, right? I mean, this poll says 65% of you are in favor of using Airbnb, but this is something that I thought was interesting, and I actually brought this to your guys' attention in last night's video. If you saw all the pre-recorded video that I put out last night on what to watch for as far as Airbnb's earnings are concerned, I'd mentioned, I always try to bring the bull and bear case, even though this is one of my higher conviction stocks that I own personally, and I'm rooting for the stock to go up. One of the bear cases that I had brought up was that, there's a lot of hidden fees. It is on the expensive side. And when are we going to see a destruction of demand and a little bit more of a rotation back into hotels? And this is some of the comments that I'm seeing here that are actually on the YouTube poll that I thought were interesting. Somebody said that if not staying at something like a Disney resort or all inclusive, definitely an Airbnb. That makes sense. Somebody said Airbnb will never dominate. Too many people uncomfortable without an establishment, which I kind of get. There's no brand loyalty with Airbnb, I guess, as there would be with like a Marriott or something like that, or Hilton. So I sort of understand that, but I think that's probably for an older demographic, right? People my age and younger don't give a shit about brand loyalty with Marriott or Hilton or some of the older legacy companies, right? We just want a nice place to stay that feels like home, and we can go and experience new and different things rather than just be in the confines of a cookie cutter type setting that a hotel certainly provides. But I thought this was also interesting on one of the other, comments here. It's a little lengthy, but bear with me because I think it's very important. Patton's third says Airbnb if I'm traveling in a large group. If it's just me or my girlfriend, a hotel. I find it hotels cheaper. Airbnb might advertise cheap, but it says saying that there might be an $80 a night stay, but after a $40 service fee, $150 cleaning fee, I usually find them way more expensive. Plus, I like having my room cleaned, bed turned down, getting fresh towels, security, which is important, 24-hour front desk that can book tours, airport shuttles at no extra charge. That, I think, definitely sets hotels apart from Airbnb, and that's something that I had made my kind of bearish case on. You always look at the good and bad things when you're looking at investing in anything, and you want to make sure that you can poke holes in your convictions. And this is definitely one of those where, and I just went to Charlotte about a month ago. Almost a month ago. I just needed to stay there for one night. I was looking around Airbnbs, same situation, right? Where I wanted to just stay for one night. I saw it was a $110 stay. I go to check out. Turns out with cleaning fees and service fees and everything else, it was like $300, which I thought it was like $285. I was like, what the hell? For one night stay, all these other extra added on costs. And because of that, I actually ended up staying at a True Hotel, which was by Hilton. And so that makes sense to me. And that certainly is a bear case that you can make for Airbnb. Now, that being said, I think that they are still taking up a ridiculous amount of market share. And that's evident probably within the poll that I just took, even though it's a small sample size. But you kind of get the picture. After 100 people vote, there's 65% of them that are saying they still prefer Airbnb. But there is some concerns, right? You hear stories sometimes, and I believe I just heard this through a friend of a friend, that friend of mine was in Nashville, and their house got broken into. Then the burglar was still in the house when my friends got back home, which You're not going to have that problem in hotels. So there is a security issue, certainly, that which is scary, right? And nobody was hurt. The burglar was caught, the cops were called, so everything was fine. Just so you guys know. But that's a real thing. That's a real world situation that a friend of a friend, went through, that I know. So it happens, right? But I think that the benefits here, or the more realistic, I should say, stays for people that are using Airbnbs, or people who are staying longer. I want to go back to what I was talking about with the airlines and record travel and whatnot, and how the CEO of Hilton talked about a potential slowing of growth at stays at their Hilton hotels. If we're seeing this much travel and we're seeing the demand increase at an incredibly high rate, where else are they going? If they're not going to a Hilton, if you're not seeing them use Expedia, but you have Ed Bastian, the CEO of Delta, coming out and saying that they're looking at demand that they haven't seen ever, historic demand. And United Airlines also came out and mentioned this. Where are they staying? And the only thing I could think of is maybe they're staying at Marriott's. Maybe Marriott's doing a better job. We haven't heard from Booking, and Booking will be coming out with earnings here very shortly, I believe next week. And then the only other thing is maybe it is Airbnb. Maybe Airbnb is still crushing it despite some of the headwinds that I'm personally seeing, that some people have gripes about, especially with hidden fees and that sort of thing. So I'm not going to sit here and say that's the for sure thing. Maybe there's something I'm missing. Maybe they're going somewhere else. Maybe they're using resorts or what have you, or some other form of lodging. But man, this is very interesting to see how this is all going to shake out. One other bullish sentiment that I would like to point out, somebody that shared this with me. I think this could be bullish, guys. You should probably take a look at this as far as Airbnb is concerned. Somebody put on Twitter, we left at Airbnb. This is what the host just sent. I'm literally in tears. This looks like a massager to me, which I think is actually pretty generous of the host. It says, "Are you close by? Would you like to put me outside on the bench? You can swing by." I think this is, it's pretty nice of them to think that they just left the massager by and they wanted to swing by, make sure that they got it. And then said they offered to keep it for our next day, 5-star service. I want to find this hostess, or this host, by the way. Kristen Arnett, go follow her on Twitter. What a host. And you know what else? Kristen should have shared the Airbnb that she stayed at. This to me is very bullish. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, if you're going to go through all this trouble of sharing it on Twitter, at least let us know who the host is. That's my only gripe here. I appreciate sharing. This is very bullish for Airbnb. I'm feeling pretty confident about it. Next up, as we wind into the close here, AMD, also a big player here that's reporting earnings after the close. And this is going to be huge, right? We have AMD and the chip shortage. It's on the top of everybody's mind. You see it in headlines everywhere. They have earnings after hours today as well. Estimated earnings per share is at 91 cents, $5.52 billion in revenue. And the big story, I think, is obviously going to be the chip shortage. Can Lisa Su help navigate us through this, especially during her conference call, which will be done later this evening? And one thing that I think is can't be understated is just how much AMD has come down. AMD has got absolutely wrecked from highs of around 165. Let's take a look at the chart here. And now it's trading at $91. It's actually had a pretty decent bounce from its year-to-date lows at $84 a share. Trading right now at $91. Let's go ahead and look at the 5-minute chart. You can see it's kind of been choppy just along with the rest of the market. God, what a crazy chart here intraday. It's just very choppy. But AMD and the chip side of things, they are absolutely crushing it. I actually think that this is going to be a good earnings for them, despite some of the issues that they're seeing. Demand isn't going anywhere anytime soon for their chips. there's two players in the PC world, and it's Intel and AMD, and AMD is absolutely crushing them, especially when it comes to their nano chip technology. They are leaps and bounds ahead as far as the race to that is concerned. I have a lot of concerns with Intel, and AMD certainly should do well. Stock market's officially closed. We have, let's see here. Stock market's officially closed. The S&P ended up closing green, up 0.5%. Pretty nice rally going into the end of the day. The Dow was up green. NASDAQ ended up turning green, just barely up to 0.2%, good for 27 points. So pretty much flat there. And then Russell 2000, I don't really talk about that too much. I should. It's up 0.5% as well. But pretty decent day. As these earnings roll in, I'll certainly be sharing those with you. I like this housekeeping. Says Intel is trash, Nvidia is king. First of all, agree with the first half. Intel is trash right now. Really tough time for the company. But AMD and Nvidia are in two different categories. Like Nvidia on the PC side is the graphics side, right? Whereas AMD is the processing side. And so I think that there's definitely, it's important to understand the delineation there. And then I think AMD kind of, I'm not saying that it is a apples to oranges comparison, but it's more like, I don't know, red delicious apples versus green apples. Is that a correct assumption? Let me know in the comments. All right, so Airbnb looks like it's starting to get a move on here. It's up 2.72%. We do have other earnings that we're going to be covering as well. We got Starbucks, Lyft, Skyworks, and Caesars. Guys, I also have, as there's more of you rolling in, I want you to put in the chat as well some of your favorite stocks that you're looking to buy or maybe have bought and want some thoughts on. I'm starting a new segment each and every live stream at the end of the stream called Over Under. So it's essentially short for overvalued, undervalued. And I want you to put in the chat and put over under with your ticker so that I know that you know what you're putting it out there for. Over under and the ticker, and then we can determine whether or not your stock is overvalued or undervalued. I think it's going to be a nice little cap to the live stream, and we can just cover a couple of stocks that we can just kind of comment on, or I can comment on and give you my thoughts on. But I thought it's going to be something. If it catches on, then we'll keep doing it. But over under, so over under and the ticker. Would love to hear your guys' opinions and or the tickers that you want to throw in there so that I can react to those as well. So Airbnb is now up 5%. Let's fucking go. Their expected revenue per share, as I had mentioned, was a loss of 29 cents. 1.45 billion was the expected revenue. Still waiting for those numbers to come in. Here we go. Airbnb sees 1.51 billion in revenue versus the 1.45 that I just relayed to you. So a really solid beat on revenue. They see an expectation of 2.03 billion to 2.13 billion in revenue for the second quarter. So that's the quarter that we're in right now. The expectation there was around 1.97. So another beat there as well. Looking to find earnings per share. Don't have that just yet. So far, so good on Airbnb. It's looking like the outlook is actually fantastic. The stock is now up 6.5%. Let's go, baby. Come on. They came in with a loss of 3 cents. The expectation was a loss of 29. This is exactly what I've been saying, guys. The travel demand, the travel stocks are absolutely crushing it. They beat revenue. They beat earnings per share. They gave an upbeat outlook and beat those expectations as well. The stock is up 7% after hours. Let's fucking go, baby. Hell yeah. Holla at you, boy. All right, so AMD. Let's see. That is not really moving all that much. We'll come back to Airbnb, but that thing is rolling, baby. Absolutely rolling. Nothing from Starbucks just yet. Let's check out Lyft real quick. I think Lyft is also going to do well because of the trap. Here we go. Yep, Lyft is doing well right now. It's now up 7%. Let me pull up those Lyft numbers. And again, I think this has a lot to do with travel, people. If you're traveling, you're booking your Airbnbs, you're using Lyft, you're using Uber. I use Lyft when I just traveled recently. Okay. So expectations here for Lyft. The estimated earnings per share were a loss of 7 cents. Average estimate for revenue was around 846 million. Waiting for those numbers to come in. Looks like 875.6 versus the 845 that I mentioned is the actual revenue. So they beat on revenue there. The stock just spiked up around 7% and actually had a really decent pullback here. It's a bit all over the place. Right now, it's only up around 2%. Looks like they beat, but then missed on active riders. Waiting to get those numbers in. Waiting to get those numbers in on Lyft. Okay, active riders, 17.8 million, was up 31.9% year over year, it looks like. But that still came in below expectations for Lyft. They came in at a loss of 57 cents versus the loss of 7 cents expected. So that's why we're seeing a bit of a mixed reaction here. They came in and actually beat on revenue quite a bit. They came in for a significant loss per share compared to what was expected. Again, that was a loss of 57 cents versus a loss of 7 cents, which was the expectation. That's actually quite a shocker on that. My first reaction to this is that it probably has to do with associated costs due to wages, among a lot of other things, inflation, that sort of thing, probably weighed heavily on Lyft's earnings, which is why we're seeing an increase and a beat on expectations when it comes to revenue, but they actually missed significantly on earnings per share. They also missed on active riders, which certainly could impact the stock. And we're seeing this react a little bit erratic. It was up around 7%. Stock's up around 2.5% now. I'm sure we'll have to hear from them on their conference call and what we're seeing there as far as that's concerned. So there you have it for Lyft. Let's check out Starbucks right now. Starbucks is a bit all over the place as well. So close the day down around 1.5% at 74.33. Trading right now at $75.46. It's up around 1.5%. Let's take a look, see if those earnings are in. It looks like they might be just based off of how the stock's trading right now. Yep, looks like they're in. Revenue is at 7.6 billion versus the 7.61 billion expected. So a slight miss on revenue. Earnings per share, also a slight miss, 59 cents versus the 60-cent expectation. So a slight miss on Starbucks altogether, yet the stock's still trading up around 1.5%. Not quite sure why the stock's actually trading up. I'm sure it has a lot to do with guidance. Maybe they're guiding here. My initial reaction to this is probably because, and I mentioned this yesterday's video on Starbucks on what I was expecting for them. This probably has a lot to do, and as we unpack some of the earnings report, I'm sure this probably has a lot to do with the shutdowns in China, and I'm sure that we'll hear from them as far as that's concerned, as well as that has carried on over into the second quarter too. And we're seeing how the stock is trading right now. It was up significantly, and it's looking like now we're starting to see this trade down. Still technically green, but a bit all over the place. We'll come back to Starbucks and see where that's going. Check back in with Airbnb. If you guys are just tuning in, Airbnb crushed earnings. They came in at a loss of 3 cents. The expectation was a loss of 29 cents. So while they did come in for a loss, it wasn't nearly as bad as many were expecting. They also came in and beat on revenue as well. Pretty solid beat around all around. And I imagine that, and they also beat guidance as well for the quarter that we are currently in. So really good stuff on Airbnb. I'm pumped for this, as this is one of my highest convictions as far as stocks are concerned. Of course, why did I even say that? As far as stocks are concerned, that's hilarious. All right, so checking out AMD. No reaction from them just yet. I think if memory serves, I think AMD is a little bit late to the game as far as earnings are. Just kidding. I just saw this pop up. Here we go. All right. AMD is skyrocketing right now. It's up 4.5% after hours. Look at that. What a giant ass boner candle from AMD. All right. Going to pull up these numbers here right now. AMD is literally off the chart. All right. Hold on. Here we go. Boner candle, AMD. All right. As soon as I get those numbers, I will hand them off to you guys. It's still very early as they were just released, but this is skyrocketing as well. It looks like it touched up around 6%, pulling back here a little bit. It's around 5.5 trading right now after hours. Quarterly revenue grew 5.9 billion. It grew 71% year over year. Holy shit balls. Gross margin grew 2 percentage points. Non-GAAP gross margin grew 7 percentage points year over year. Damn. Quarter one revenue is at 5.9. The estimate was at 5.3, as I had shared earlier at the top of the show. So a massive beat on revenue. Adjusted earnings per share, $1.13. The estimate was at 92 cents. Massive beat. Massive beat on AMD. Wow. That is amazing. Stock touched 96.83. It is pulling back here a little bit right now. Now remember, it is early, so the reaction here could go either way. We'll have to see what the guidance is. I haven't yet seen those numbers. Looking here just to see what else we got on AMD. So they guided 6.5 billion, up 69% year over year for Q2. The expectation for that was 5.13 billion. So a massive beat on guidance as well. 6.5 billion is their guidance for Q2. 5.13 was the expectation for Q2. That is amazing. Gross margins are up are at 54%. Holy shit. This is wild, guys. Okay, raises fiscal year 22 guidance to 26.3 billion. That's up 60% year over year. 21.5 was the guide there. So another massive beat of 5 billion. So they raised their guidance. They absolutely smashed earnings. What's not to like about AMD right now? Stock's up around 4.5%. I think it probably goes higher. Let's take a look at the daily chart here. We're looking at the daily. Tomorrow, the resistance is going to be $100 a share. That's this top line right here. So this green line that I'm showing you right now on the daily chart, that's going to be your resistance at around $100 a share. Right now it's trading around 95. We'll see what Lisa Su has to say on her conference call. I'm sure she will also knock it out of the park, as she always does. And so this is actually really exciting. I think $84 was the bottom for AMD. Very exciting stuff there. They absolutely annihilated earnings and their guidance as far as AMD is concerned. Guys, if you're watching this stream right now, if you're tuning in and you haven't hit that like button, I certainly would appreciate it. Also, if you're not subscribed, I get a lot of new subscribers whenever I'm reacting to earnings, especially the popular ones such as AMD. But I react to all of these earnings. If you guys are new to the channel, if this is your first time visiting, I would encourage you to hit the subscribe button, as I react to all of these earnings as they come in every single day. So if you want to see more earnings reactions like this, make sure you're hitting the subscribe button, hit that notification bell, as I go live at 3:45 p.m. Eastern time every day to react to earnings. We'd love to have you guys as part of the Chaos crew as well. If you guys wouldn't mind hitting that join button next to subscribe to get my daily watch list that I put out every day before the market opens, then I would certainly appreciate that support as well. Thanks so much for the support. Hit that like button. So yeah, just a recap here. So AMD came in, absolutely smashed earnings. Airbnb came in, also smashed earnings. We got Starbucks that came in and slightly missed on earnings. And let's check back in on Starbucks right now. The stock is, let's go back to the 5-minute too. Stock's now trading just up 0.5%. It's kind of been flat, pretty non-reactionary to these earnings. So they came in with a 60-cent earnings per share expectation. They came in at 59. They missed by I think about 100 million or $1 million dollars in revenue. So just a slight miss on Starbucks, and the stock hasn't really reacted all that much. We'll return to that one. Lyft also came in and they actually beat revenue, but missed on earnings per share badly. They were only expected to come in at a loss of 7 cents. They actually came in at a loss of 57 cents. And now the stock is trading down 3%. This has kind of been one of those trouble spots for ride sharing companies that are trying to grow at all costs. Uber has been suffering the same fate, right? Uber cannot figure out how to become profitable. And it seems as if Lyft is in the same boat. I came into these earnings actually a little bit optimistic on Lyft and even Uber just because of the travel demand. And it seems as if that's not even helping the stock. So, really tough miss here as far as earnings per share are concerned. They can bring in the revenue all they want, but for some reason, they just can't seem to turn a profit. You can see Lyft is now down 3%. Skyworks, we haven't talked about that one yet. Oops. Skyworks, 3.5% down. Let's see. Those earnings were the expected earnings per share 263, 1.33 billion was the expected revenue for Skyworks. Let's see here. They came in and in line. 263 versus 263 was the expectation there. Stock is now trading down 3.5%. Let's see where the revenue was. Sales was 1.34 billion. They beat the 1.33 billion. So not by much, but interesting. Not really any earth-shattering numbers here. They see Q3, their adjusted earnings per share at $2.36 at midpoint versus the 255. So that's actually a bit of a miss. It's probably why the stock is selling down because of that guidance lower than what the expectation was. So there's your Skyworks earnings. Also, Caesars reports today, and the entertainment industry has been interesting, especially when it comes to the casino side and gaming. So looking at Caesars, the stock is flat right now. It does look like we got some sort of reaction, and perhaps those earnings are in. I will give a recap of those AMD earnings. I see a lot of you guys asking about it. Just give me one moment. So Caesars actually came in a loss of $2.11 versus the loss of $2.11 that was expected. So not any worse than what people were thinking. Revenue came in with a slight miss, 2.3 billion versus the 2.34 billion that was the expectation. The same store adjusted EBITDA was around 296 million versus the 521 million last year. That is tough stuff for Caesars. I think a lot of that has to do with everything going on in Macau and the shutdowns that were going on in China. So not really like too alarming, but especially as we're starting to see things open back up there. So it's a tough quarter for Caesars, but I don't think it was anything that anybody was really all that surprised about. Stocks trading flat here after hours. All right, let's check back in with AMD, see where we're at there. AMD absolutely crushed earnings. The stock is actually given back a little bit of its gains from the initial pop, all the way up to 96.83 per share was that pop and the reaction on earnings. They crushed it, guys. They crushed earnings. They crushed on revenue as well, and actually came in above what expectations were for guidance. Really good stuff from AMD. So just to recap here, they came in at $1.13 per share. The expectation was 91 cents per share. So really handy beat on earnings per share. They also came in and crushed on revenue as well. 5.89 billion, beating the $5.52 billion estimate. The real key here was the guidance. They see 6.3 to 6.7 versus 6.38 as far as guidance is concerned. The fiscal 2022 guidance for this was the incredible part. 30 to 60% increase, and 26.3 billion versus the 25.2 billion. Their profit margins, gross profit margins, are now up to 54%. That's amazing. That's amazing. Check back in with Airbnb. They also beat earnings pretty handily. Stock's now giving back some of its gains as well. It was up to $157, which was good for around 6 to 7%. Now trading up only around 4%. Again, we'll have to hear from the conference call to see what they have coming down the pipeline and what they're excited about. But listen, those earnings were really good. They came in for a loss of 3 cents. The expectation was a loss of 29 cents. A lot of that had to do with, I would imagine, some of the shutdowns in Europe that they were still experiencing. Remember, Omicron kind of came in the U.S. and left very quickly. It wasn't the case for certain countries out of the U.S. Europe certainly wreaked a lot of havoc, which is why we saw Airbnb report a loss for Q1. The expectation for Q2, though, was much higher than what the analysts were expecting. So, the travel boom is here, folks. And I would imagine Brian Chesky, the CEO of Airbnb, is going to have a lot to say about that. And I think that this is certainly one to watch for. And I think that this was absolutely phenomenal. Actually, Brian Chesky just came out and tweeted. He said our Q results are in 102 million nights booked. Wow. 1.5 billion in revenue, 70% year-over-year growth, 19 million in net loss, 229 million adjusted EBITDA, 1.2 billion dollars in free cash flow. That's impressive. 2 years ago, our business dropped 80%. Our IPO was put on hold, and some didn't think we would make it at all. And here's how we turned Airbnb around. He goes on to say, first, we simplified our business. We got back to our roots, prioritizing everyday people who host their homes and offer experiences. Just going into some of the other stuff that he had mentioned. By 2021, we started investing in brand marketing again. Market spend was up from 34% to our revenue to now 20% in 2021, yada, yada, yada. All right. Brian Chesky went on a crazy thread on Twitter. Good stuff there. Go follow him on Twitter. He put out a pretty decent thread there for Airbnb. Couple comments here. Would like to pick up Airbnb and AMD, looking for more of a sale. Okay. Also, guys, I said this in the top of the show. Some of you might not have been here, but I'm starting a new segment on the show towards the end of the stream called Over Under. If you guys have any stocks that you're looking at and you would like to put that in the chat, make sure you put Over Under and the ticker and I can give my reaction to those companies as to whether or not I think they are overvalued or undervalued. Over Under is going to be a new segment that I do every stream at the end of the show. So make sure you guys are putting that in the chat. Remember, Over Under and then the ticker. Would love to get your guys's picks and see what you guys are looking at. Raylan says Nvidia simply play up until earnings run up. Maybe. I mean, yes, Nvidia is closely tied to AMD in that they are semiconductors. But again, Nvidia plays in different areas of the market than AMD does, even though they kind of work together. So maybe AMD makes a move. It doesn't seem as if AMD is moving all that much in response to I'm sorry, it doesn't look like Nvidia is moving all that much in response to AMD's earnings. But, it's early yet. We could see some more movement as well. Let's also consider that we have the Fed meeting tomorrow, which could create some volatility. And we have AMD giving back some more gains here, now only up around 3.5%. We'll have to see what happens here as we get into the conference call and that sort of thing. But pretty good stuff overall, guys. Just to recap, AMD came in, absolutely crushed earnings. You can see the stocks moving up and looking pretty good. Airbnb also crushed earnings. Starbucks came in with a slight miss. We'll have to see how they shake out. Let's take a look, see where that stock is, because it was kind of flat-ish. Still holding on to some green in the after hours. And then we had Lyft that came in, badly missed earnings per share, and then beat on revenue, though. Missed on active riders. So not looking great for Lyft as the stock's now trading down 2.5%. Probably not as strong of a reaction as I would have expected. But so if you are an investor of Lyft, then maybe that can provide some solace for you. Looking at Skyworks, they also came in, kind of had a disappointing quarter and lowered their guidance. The stock's down 2.5%. And then Caesars came in with earnings that were as expected. Stock's up around 1% here. A lot of this had to do with, Macau and everything that was going on in China. So there's your big earnings this afternoon and a recap on that. Again, guys, I give my reaction to these earnings every single day at the market close at 3:45 p.m. Eastern time. So if you're not subscribed, I would encourage you to do so if you want to see more reactions to earnings like this. And then, if you guys want more of the chaos or you want more Chaos Crew stuff, hit the join button next to subscribe. Each and every morning, I put out a list of 5 stocks that I think are worth watching in the stock market. So you don't have to. I do the work for you. And it's $4.99 a month. You can't beat it. It's an unbelievable value. You get access to our Discord group and all kinds of other stuff by hitting the join button next to subscribe. If you can't see the join button there, I'd also encourage you to check out the link in the description at ownthechaos.com. Check it out. We'd love to have you guys as part of the crew. It would show tremendous support for me and little to no risk to you. Would love to have you guys as a part of the crew. A lot of our Chaos Crew members can attest to that. I'm sure of it. All right. Let me check back into some of the chat here to see where you guys are at. We're going to do some over-under. I like this one. Can you do over under on BRKB? So Berkshire Hathaway B shares. Warren Buffett had his annual meeting for the first time in person in 2 years. Oop, that's A. We don't need BRKA. I don't know if anybody's buying BRKA shares. There we go. BRKB. Let's go to the daily chart and look at this. So we have BRKB that has been pulled down here. Do I think this is overvalued or undervalued? It's very interesting. The stock's trading at 24 times next year's earnings. So we compare it to the S&P 500 that's trading around 16, 17 times next year's earnings. I would say that, yes, it is a little bit overvalued. But some of the value stocks, some of the defensive plays have been a safe haven for a lot of investors, especially in a time where we're seeing inflation take place, interest rates are going up, and that sort of thing. Berkshire Hathaway has corrected quite a bit from 362 highs to 318.99. I think that there's potential that this may come down, as we are seeing a pretty interesting rotation from Berkshire type stocks, meaning value stocks, going back into some of the big tech stocks. And I'm talking about Alphabet. As you can see that this has started to make a little bit of a turn. Not yet Amazon, but Facebook for sure. Let's take a look at Facebook. That stock has closed over the 50-day moving average for the first time yesterday. And I think that the trajectory on that is fantastic. This is trading at around 14, 15 times next year's earnings. Super undervalued, in my opinion. And we're looking at Apple as well. There's a lot of rotation coming back into some of the bigger tech stocks, the bigger tech names. And you have BRKB that is in the middle of a a bit of a correction. Could we see this turn around? Yes, but I think that there's a little bit more for this to come down. Maybe around 302 would be that spot that I watch, which is a 200-day moving average. So thanks for that. I appreciate that, Elizabeth. Thanks for being the first one in the over-under segment. Okay. Scrolling through here. Man, there's a lot of you guys. A lot of you getting chatty. I love it. Over under SITM. Snookeroo says. Over under SITM. Take a look at SITM. Okay. So looking at this, stocks trading at 50 times next year's earnings. So you know what I'm going to say there. Yeah, it's quite expensive, especially in an environment where we're seeing a lot of things get re-rated. So STIM still falling down here. I think that there's potential that maybe we're seeing a bit of a turn. Is it overvalued? Yes, I think it is. The chart tells me, though, that we potentially have seen a bottom in SITM. So I would say be careful. I would have a stop here at around 162.5, as I do think that it's a bit overvalued still. Looking here, there is something to be said for some momentum to be picking up. So this came down to oversold levels on RSI just last couple weeks, and really starting to make the turn. So if this can kind of break up over that resistance around 195, the momentum can continue, but I would keep a tight stop there around 163.5 if it were me. Thanks for that one, Snookeroo. Over under Square. Love this one. Third in water, Square. So let's take a look at Square's chart and see what we can find out. Square, this is, again, the daily chart on Square, and or block, I guess we should start calling it now. I hate that all these tech companies have changed their name, and you get used to one thing and it's just like, and here's the other thing about this. They change the name, don't change the ticker, so you're still calling it Square even though it's called block. Nevertheless, stock's trading at 81 times next year's earnings. That is absolutely wild, especially considering that this has come down 60%. 289.23 was the all-time high that we saw just in August of last year. So 9 months ago, we saw this trading at 289. It's trading at 102. It's still overvalued, from a PE standpoint, especially when you compare it to everything else. Is the growth there, though, to catch up to its valuation? And that's going to be really challenging, I think. My hunch is no. I still think that this is overvalued. As much as I like the company, and I think the company is fantastic, by the way, I do think it's overvalued still, and I think that there's potential for this to come down even further. Watch for this to test that support at $97, and be careful there. But I do think that Square's still overvalued. I don't know. I would be very hesitant. I would be very cautious trading Square now, even with the drawdown. Starbucks over under. I think that Starbucks is undervalued. I'm not even going to look at the chart. We just covered that here in earnings today, but I appreciate you sharing this with the group. I would say that Starbucks is undervalued. I think it goes up higher from here, even though they came in with earnings that weren't so fantastic. Over under on CLF or ASO. AO Smith. Ooh, excuse me. AO Smith. I think that Cleveland Cliffs could be overvalued, even though the stock's only trading at 5 times next year's earnings. But I think this is also an opportunity. My final say on Cleveland Cliffs, it's undervalued. Go buy it. ASO, AOS is a ASO. Oh, so Academy Sports. So I always get it confused. AOS is AO Smith. ASO Academy Sports. This is trading at 5 times also next year's earnings. This is undervalued in my opinion. This has actually had a pretty decent bounce. Demand is very strong in the retail space. We've heard that from Lululemon, some of the other retail companies, that people are still out there spending money. I like ASO here. A couple other ones. Let's go ahead and oh, nice. Tucker said he crushed his stat exam. We talked about that last week. Well done. Over under on Shopify. Ooh, interesting. Considering that Shopify has come down also around 60%, actually more than that, around 70%. Shopify has sold off. Came from 1762, almost $1,800 a share, to bottomed out at around $411. Looking at this, forward PE still trading at 130 times next year's earnings. That is very tough for me to say that this is undervalued. I can't say that it's undervalued. It's just not, which means that it's overvalued. However, I think that they have the ability to grow into some of that valuation. 135 times next year's earnings. I don't know about that, especially considering we saw what we saw from Amazon. Could we see the same fate from Shopify? They have earnings on Thursday after hours, Thursday pre-market, sorry. So I'll certainly be reacting to those on Thursday. Make sure you're tuning in to get my full reaction on Shopify, but I would be nervous as a Shopify holder going in the earnings here. That being said, you can see that it actually made a pretty decent turn here and may have appeared to have bottomed at $411 per share. All right. Couple other ones. Let's go ahead and check them out. Over under on HDSN. Let's do HDSN. Pulling that one up. Hudson Tech. 9 times next year's earnings. This looks pretty undervalued. I'd say undervalued. Stock looks actually pretty good. The trend is looking pretty decent here. I'd have to look at the fundamentals. I don't know much about the company. I'm just going off of what I'm seeing here from the basic statistics. 52-week low is at 183. So in a year's time, this has gone up by double, or I'm sorry, gone up by triple. But the trend looks pretty darn good. Looks like they had a pretty nice reaction to earnings. I'd have to go back and take a look at those. But this actually looks pretty darn good on the chart. Nice trajectory here. I like this. It's not undervalued. I will say it's at value. Okay. We're going to do one more. And is AMD overvalued? I would say AMD is not overvalued, even though that the PE is certainly high. We just saw from them they're expecting a 60% year-over-year growth, and that's still with a company that has been around forever. So for me, I would say that AMD is still undervalued, even at this valuation, because I think that they can grow into that multiple that they have. So I like AMD still. I still think that is undervalued. Last one, under over on Hood. It's still overvalued. Plain and simple. Robinhood is overvalued. All right, guys. So thanks so much for tuning in. Tomorrow I'll be back here at 3:45 p.m. Eastern time. We're going to be reacting to some more earnings, and we have another big day up ahead of us. Let me pull those up real quick to let you guys know what exactly I'll be covering. So we have Moderna, CVS in the morning. We also have Marriott, which will be interesting, especially considering we just heard from Airbnb and Hilton, as well as Expedia. So we have Marriott tomorrow morning. I'll give you guys my thoughts on those tomorrow afternoon. But in the live stream itself, we have Marathon Oil, which will be very important to cover because energy has been so hot lately. Uber, Etsy, Twilio, Skills, and Fortinet. Those are going to be the big ones that I'm going to be reacting to tomorrow. Fortinet's going to be interesting, especially in the cybersecurity space. It's the first big cybersecurity company that's going to be reporting, I believe, in this earnings season. So I'm going to be looking forward to that one. So guys, thanks so much for tuning in. I'll see you tomorrow. Make sure you hit that subscribe button and that notification bell to get notified when I go live. And that's going to do it for me. Deuces.